Okay, Ritu. Now we're looking at the newspaper, right, on 22nd of January, right, and this is Tuesday, and the first is obviously the CGI has pulled out of the CBI hearing, right, case hearing, and why is that? Because he is himself obviously a part of the higher powered committee scheduled to select the agency's director. So can you tell me who are the people?
Prime Minister,
CGI, and the leader of the opposition. So three people basically form the select committee, okay, of the CBI. So this is important, okay. On the other hand, what about the CIC? Prime
Cabinet Minister nominated by the Prime Minister.
and
Third person is
leader of the
the
opposition.
opposition.
Okay. Okay. Then what has happened is finally the government has waken up in the election year, and now they're increasing the pensions of the poor, disabled, and the widows from 200 to 800 per month. And for those above 18, the proposal is to increase the pension amount from 500 to 1200. Okay. Now the problem obviously is very straightforward. Still, there's a lack of accessibility of these people, and most of these things are not actually implemented letter and spirit. Okay, so this is there, and the proposal is being scrutinized for possibility for inclusion in the budget speech also. Okay, now, right? So these two things have happened. So we're looking for the vulnerable, and this is a part of the DPSP. Okay, and which DPSP are they part of? Yes, can somebody tell me?
I think Article 41.
41, right? Okay, so just to have an idea, in case you don't know, it's there in Article 41. Okay, right. Let's move ahead to the nation. Plastic waste imports to go up. So there's an influx of PET bottles, and they have quadrupled, right? And this is by the Pandit Deen Dayal Smriti Manch, right? It's a Delhi-based environmental organization. It's saying that Indian firms are importing plastic scrap from China, Italy, Malawi for recycling, and import of PET bottle scraps flakes have increased from 12,000 tons to 48,000 tons. And India has already imported more than 25,000, empties in the 3 months of financial 1890, right? So this is there. Then the government and industry is estimating India consumes nearly 13 million tons of plastics and recycles, right? Only 4 million tons. There's a lack of a efficient waste segregation system. Inadequate collection is a root cause, and obviously this is there. So again, plastic waste management tools are extremely important. So we need to bother about it, right? That's the main thing. This data will be very useful for any answer on the plastic waste management tools, right? For the mains. Then there's a challenge in the Madras High Court on the recent amendment on the economically weaker sector. So there's a debate about the communal reservation, right? And there was a debate even between the senior judge. So there was a very interesting thing which happened. So when the senior judge pointed out that providing reservation for people except those who were socially and educationally backward, as well as those belonging to scheduled tribe and scheduled tribe, would naturally be referred as a forward caste, ASG says the right term would be upper community and not forward caste. Okay, right? So that is what they're saying. And he contended that EWS was vertical, not horizontal reservation. Okay. On the other hand, he also talked about the fact that because the MP was a part of the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right, and he cannot be an aggrieved party, right, because he was a part of the process. Okay, that is what the ASG was talking about. But on the other hand, Senior Counsel P. Vinsel says that he will focus on something very different. He says the intention of the framers of the Constitution was to provide reservation to undo historic wrongs against oppression and backward classes, right? And unlike caste, which gets attached to a person by birth, economic status was a fluctuating factor, and that is actually which makes the implementation of economic criteria very weak. So your economic criteria can very quickly change in the next 6 months. So the whole problem is that what you were 6 months ago, you might not be today, right? And so it's going to be very difficult to track or implement this fairly. Okay. Then there is an affidavit on in the Supreme Court on the CIC appointment, right? And the main criticism, obviously, of CIC appointment is the fact that ex-bureaucrats normally get this thing allocated as a way of being loyal to the government. If they're loyal to the government, they get this posting. So obviously this is has to be made more fair, right? And more people from the civil society should be made a part of it. Then we have Mr. Anup Surendranath, and he says that while the constitutional amendment may survive the basic structures test, though obviously whatever he's saying is very, very difficult to appreciate, but he's saying the harder test would be the implementation, right? And there's an ambiguity. He's saying that the 103rd constitutional amendment introducing special measures and reservations for economically weaker sections has been perceived as being obviously unconstitutional, right? And he says that this article takes a skeptical view of this reading and says that obviously it will take us to unclear constitutional territories, okay? And the strongest constitutional challenge would not be the amendment itself, but the way the government is implementing it, right? And obviously what the major points he said that, let's very quickly talk about it. He's saying that Indira Sahni case, which basically talks about this, right? That which had actually held Narasimha Rao executive order, right, providing 10% reservation based purely on economic criteria and constitution. He says that was not a constitutional amendment, right? So, and the reasons included that income property holdings cannot be a basis of inclusion from government jobs, and constitution was mainly concerned with addressing social backwardness. So the argument he's making is very technical. He's saying constitutional amendment vis-a-vis the executive law, there might be a different power attached to it, and the court might see it differently. And he says the basic structure, obviously, the decision in the Indira Sahni case involved testing an executive order against existing constitutional provisions, right? And in the current case, we are considered with a constitutional amendment brought into force with the constant power of the parliament, right? And the fact that they are not concerned with legislative or executive power means the amendment will be testing basic structure and not constitutional provisions existing before the amendment. So obviously the question is whether the basic structure is being violated or not, right? And whether he says that he doesn't feel that the backwardness in constitution can only mean social and educational backwardness. But again, it is his opinion. It's very difficult to see anything otherwise because there is no criteria, at least in the constitution, about economic criteria. And obviously, we can also have our views, he says, on whether economically weaker sections reservations can elevate poverty, which they almost certainly will not. But in reality, it is a basic structure economy. So obviously, he says he'll not go into that. And he says economic criteria can be seen as a way of basis of differential treatment and would obviously be stressed to constitute suspect when it comes to special measures such as reservation. He says poverty basically inflicts serious disadvantages. So that is the basic idea. Now the problem, obviously, he says is very different. He says the problem is that the way it is implemented. So if you think about it, so the main problem is if the beneficiaries are identified, all those with family income less than 8 lakh per annum, right? It must necessarily fail constitutional scrutiny. To justify that an individual below poverty line and another family with 8 lakh per income belong to the same group for the purpose of affirmative action will be basically involving constitutional jugglery at an unprecedented scale. Somebody who doesn't even earn 50,000 per annum vis-a-vis you comparing him into 8 lakh is crazy, especially in a country where the income tax limit is 2.5 lakh. So that is the basic thing, right? The temptation is very obviously. So he's saying it might survive the basic structure text, but obviously it's his opinion, right? And I think he wants to write a pro-government article maybe, and that might also be true. But it's the other side that the basic argument is that it's a constitutional amendment. So obviously it has to violate the basic structure. Now whether socially and backward it is only for socially and backward communities, that's also debatable. Okay. Then obviously we yesterday did talk about Jallikattu, and he says there's an editorial in the Hindu about this, or death by resign. Okay. So Ritu, did you go through this? Death by design. So what does this say?
They mentioned that this year's Jallikattu celebrations were more secure, were supposed to be more secure than the previous ones because the health minister was organizing it. The chief minister was in the audience and they had barricades at one side. Still their people died.
Okay.
And the deaths were after the competition was over.
Death were after.
So they were like, the Bulls don't know that the competition has ended.
Okay.
And it was at the exit point.
Okay.
So they're like, maybe next time they will have barricades at the exit point also. But at the end of the day, the animal cannot be controlled.
Yeah, because once he is actually been made aggressive, it's going to be very difficult, right? Anything else from this? Okay, so basically Jallikattu, historically, even in Indus Valley civilization, we have seen it in Bahubali and so on. The pros obviously are that obviously it increases the rearing capacity of native species, because there are a lot of species which are actually now being imported, and with Jallikattu, basically the bull is being reared, obviously, right? It would lead to better kind of a breed, right? Better breeding capacity. So obviously that was very, very useful for us. Okay, then we have this article. This is important for political science optional, I feel. The fault lines of diplomatic recrimination. Basically, the idea is that obviously what has happened is something very weird. Okay, so United States, right, has basically created the detention and arrest of Sabrina Meng Wanzhou, who is the CFO and of Huawei. And obviously, remember, Huawei is one of the biggest challenges to Apple. It is the second largest maker of smartphones in the world. And it says that she has been arrested for breaking US sanctions on Iran by the making of bank fraud. And what happened was that USA had asked China to detain her. Now remember, Miss Meng is very, very rich. She's very, very powerful, right? And Ren Zhengfei is a founding member of the Chinese, Communist Party. And the Canadian court has granted her bail, but she could face extradition to the US. What happened was that in recent conviction, there was a retrial done by China of a Canadian national, Robert Lloyd Schellenberg, and he has been put to death, right? Because of the fact that this thing has happened. Previously it was not as strict as possible, right? And Justin Trudeau obviously assailed this as a political move, but again, when you agree to the US and you actually take sides, I think Canada was just digging its grave because of the fact that Chinese don't take any kind of they don't like to be threatened in this way. And further is that they have also ordered recent detention of other two Chinese diplomats.
Canadian diplomats.
Yeah, who was on leave. So again, this makes very, very serious. Okay, the Chinese assessment is that the US is, exercised over the stature of Huawei and is a resultant threat to US technology companies, and links this action to Mrs. Meng. And obviously, because Huawei has overtaken Apple to become the second largest maker of smartphones, its investments on research and development are growing faster and faster. So the conflict between China and US and the West especially raises serious concerns that are, germane to international trade and business. So this is obviously one thing. The first is its impact on a troubled state of international relations and international law. And I think this is a question that even can come in law optional this year, right? So obviously, no one suggests that Ms. Meng did not transgress US law. She may have acted surreptitiously to counter US sanctions against Iran. The point is, however, such drastic action against a top executive warranted, especially in the context of fragile relationship between them already, right? Some experts cite the concept of long-arm jurisdiction in support of US actions. Such jurisdiction empowers a nation to enforce its laws and rules over foreign entities or courts. But there's obviously a very, very strong political color, and China obviously is a challenger to the US, and obviously they will not want to take it lying down, and that's the basic problem that is happening. Okay, the detention of Ms. Meng was obviously meant to send out a signal not only to China but also to the prospective violators of US sanctions. If this was objective, it was achieved. With the rider that the nation acting so peremptorily may have to brace itself to meet retaliatory targeted by the targeted nation. Okay, but what will happen is that the collateral damage which has been given to China would set alarm bells in the West. Now, no other country would actually dream of doing it again. because then they basically it would mean any Canadian or any citizen in China would be under threat if they do so. The second issue, obviously, is of cybersecurity. China, along with Russia, has been a suspect in the eyes of the West for spying, the basis of this being proven instances of online attacks and unestablished cases of breaches in Western computer system. In the case of UAE, the Western line is that it is the corporation close to the Chinese establishment. Its activities cannot be pure technological and commercial. And remember, Ren Zhengfei, who's the father of Meng, has links with the PLA. And the specific charge is that in every piece of hardware sold by it, there are microchips and devices that provide substantial information to the authorities. The irony is that there has been no irrefutable evidence to substantiate this change. Western agency says it is UAE is so smart and skillful it will be possible to fret out such evidence, but obviously, nobody will believe such an argument in such a way. The third is obviously there is a continuous fragility of cybersecurity. The average computer user is concerned breaches are highly suspect. There's a growing reluctance of large corporation to invest in cybersecurity, right? Because there are always loopholes, right? There's after the loophole, there's an emerging philosophy that security can never be 100%. So that is another thing that is happening. Okay, so the main obviously issue is China may be expected to up the ante if any Western countries actually goes to the extent of banning Huawei from a role in the upgradation in, let's say, 5G technology. China suspects the anti-Huawei campaign is only at the instance of its competitors to cut down its size on the launch of a valuable product, which is basically Huawei is basically going to do, right? That is 5G. Okay, the next article, which is very useful, I would say, is from the next page. There's an article on EVMs, right? It basically talks about three things. Ritu, have you read this article? You haven't gone through? So it has basically three things, what she says. So he says that, what are the three problems? Right? He says that he gives the instance of Germany in this article that the German Constitutional Court had made EVMs in 2009, right? So here it is. There's a German Constitutional Court in 2009 forced the country to scrap the EVMs and return to a paper ballot. And other technological advanced nations and Netherlands and Ireland also have abandoned the EVMs. Okay, so he says there are two criteria. EVMs are neither transparent nor verifiable. Neither can the voter see the vote being recorded, nor it can be verified later whether the vote was recorded correctly. Right? What is verifiable is the total number of votes, not the choice in each vote. So this is again a big problem. Right? I think this should be the EVM should be able to display this, and we are now in 2019. We are not in 1990, and using a 1990 technology today is actually absurd, I would say. Okay, and also something so important for us. An electronic display of voter selection may not be the same as voter, is stored electronically in the machine's memory. So this gap was there, and the VVPAT was introduced, but obviously it only solves the problem of the voting part. The counting remains opaque. If anyone suspects a counting error, there's no recourse. For an electronic recount is obviously absurd. So that's another problem which is there. Right? And then the present EC VVPAT auditing is restricted to only one constituency. Okay, and obviously in the recent essay, Ashok Vardhan Shetty, a former ISO, demonstrated that the sample size will fail to detect 98 to 99% of the EVMs most of the times. So obviously this is there, right? And the EVMs also are, secrecy is also a problem. This is actually the biggest issue, I would say, in the EVMs. With the ballot paper, the EC could mix ballot papers with different booths before recounting, so that the voting preferences could not be connected to a given locality. अब क्या होता है, हमें booth based counting पता लग जाती है, तो क्या होगा, मुझे पता लग जाएगा मुझे कहाँ से वोट नहीं मिले, right? If I'm in power. So if this allows you to discern voting patterns and renders marginalized communities vulnerable to pressure. So मुझे पता है बीजेपी वालों को पता लग जाएगा कि मुस्लिम वोट नहीं करेंगे, या कांग्रेस वालों को पता लग जाएगा कि अपर कास्ट हिंदू वोट नहीं करते हैं मेरे लिए. So मुझे पता है कि किनका काम नहीं करना है. So indirectly it is jeopardizing democracy. So on three accounts, transparency, verifiability, and secrecy, EVMs are followed. Okay. So that's one. The other is this article, justice is delayed is markets timed, and it says in a market economy like India, a strong judiciary is required for a quick settlement of disputes. So for this, I would say the best idea is that everybody should go through this chapter number 9 of the economic survey last year, in which a lot more detailed discussion is done in this. Just for the, let's first look at the justice delays topic first. So what does it say? It says since 1991, economic reforms, right? India has improved tremendously in almost all indicators, and it's one of the fastest growing nation. Now we have done reforms like the goods and services taxes. We are making India more competitive in the ease of business ranking. How much is the ranking, Ritu? 77. Okay. So then implementation of the insolvency bankruptcy code has also happened. So obviously India has the advantage that the roots of its institution are strong, but they have failed to grow with the growing population and increasing demands. And the judiciary system particularly, is far from reaching the pace required for efficient functioning. So there's a criticism of the judiciary that the judiciary is not actually transparent in information, is not efficient in dispute settlement, contract enforcement in a timely manner. Okay, right? And he says in a market economy, the government has little role to play in transactions among the people. So there's a need for this. Okay, he mentions the economic survey, right? And right, the economic survey 1718 has set aside a chapter on timely justice, and it noted that the current working capacity of High Court and Supreme Court is 63.6. Further, there are pending cases. The huge number of pending cases, 1.8 lakh, right? Close to 3.5 million in High Court, right? Then average pendency is about 4.3 years. Okay, so all this data is extremely, extremely important for you, right? So that's one. Okay, so basically you need to go through this article in detail, I would suggest, right? Okay, then I would suggest that this chapter, we have already covered this chapter in class previously, right? But in case you haven't gone through this chapter, it has beautiful diagrams which can be used. Okay, take the example of the appellate tribunal, how the pending cases are increasing in various disputes. So from 2009, look at this, how much there has been increase in pendency. Even let's say 2008-9, this is basically an example of policy paralysis also. That from 2008-9 onwards, there's been increase in the number of cases everywhere. And from 2014, what is happening? There are more and more cases in the telecom, electricity, and the green tribunal. It tells you that what this government has done, and here this tells you what happened in the second time of the UPA. Okay, so this kind of diagram is very, very useful. Then the number of thousands of cases, the total cases, the company cases, the arbitrary cases. Again, these diagrams can be made in your answers. This is again very, very useful, I would say. Okay, then average cases in the various lower judiciary and higher court, average time taken, which it's around 6 years, something sometimes 4, etc. So again, this is also useful for us. And obviously, there's also a criticism of the SLP in this chapter, right? That the Supreme Court is actually expanding the specialty petition, right? It has given 40% SLPs to cases, right, under Article 136, and in comparison to the United States and Canada, it is just 3 and 9%. So this is there. Okay. Then obviously there's a recourse to injunction and stays. It also mentions that, right? So pending IPRs, average pending cases. So again, there are all other things that have been mentioned. Then the number of state projects, the stalling of projects. So if you think about this, 52 state projects valued 52,000 crores, and there's a stay of around 4.3 years, and the maximum stay is in mining and in shipping. Okay, the maximum amount. So that is there, right? So again, I would say this chapter, right, if you have time, please go through it today, right? And then obviously this also tells you that income tax department is one of the biggest litigants, this chapter. So that's also there. Okay, so at the end of the day, the article says the problem is with economic theory. So he says, unlike our policymakers, those in other countries seem to have realized the importance of judiciary in the efficient functioning of the market economy. The problem here lies with economic theory. The proponents of reform belong to the neoclassical economics and are taught that transactions are costless. But however, there are two thinkers, Douglas North and Richard Coase. He says, the rules and regulations that affect economic activity determine whether transactions are costless or not. And this theory of, this new theory basically says that costless, transaction and perfect information nahi hai, right? And this is a critical assumption, right? So now, obviously, we have to focus, right? And what happens is that players are willing to bypass the system by paying rents to officials. So rent seeking start ho chuki hai, and a system which was obviously customary in the license Raj is again there. Officials themselves also are. So basically, this thing, this judicial delay is leading to corruption, because I know very well that it would be foolish for me to go to the courts, right? Because it will take so much time. So it's better to pay up rather than wait for 2 years, right? Then not too much here. There is a discussion on Kartarpur corridor, but not too much important. I think better when it finalizes that's there. Arunachal and Assam CMs have defended the citizenship bill. Obviously, that's another problem. There was a yesterday EVM challenge in London by Syed Suja, who's a cyber expert, and so he had claimed that there was tampering in the 2014 elections. Okay, and this has been denied by the BHEL and the Election Commission as well. Then there's a controversy on Justice Khanna elevation, right? So again, the collegium system, right, is something that we need to revisit. So which are the 3 cases? Can anybody tell us? Yes. 3 cases which this collegium system के. Meenal, any idea? Collegium system कैसे बना था?
फर्स्ट जजेस केस था एक पहले.
So SP Gupta versus Union of India 1983. हाँ, which year?
83.
Yes, sir.
हाँ, which year?
I think 72 था. I'm not sure.
72 पक्का? देख लो.
I think so.
बताओ, first judges case, second judges case and third judges case. So second and third तो 93 and 98 है. ठीक है? This is there in this article. What about the first judges case? कब हुआ था वो? And it was in the Indira Gandhi era. अब ये बताओ कौन सा 84 है, 83 है, क्या है?
81 है sir.
81 है?
81.
So here you have to understand, याद होना चाहिए ये, because वहाँ पे it will be very impressive when you write that, because everybody knows the name of these cases, but obviously you have to talk about that in a very, very technical manner, right? Okay. Then we have China's growth has slowed down to a 20-year low, right? And the Union Bank GNPA is again very high, so that's there. Then they have a very good news for all the Biharis, right? Bihar is outgrowing others, right? 11.3% growth. Andhra Pradesh is also doing very well at 11.2. So this is wonderful, I would say. Great news, right? In the fiscal 2018, Bihar, Andhra, and Gujarat were the top rankings, right? And between the financial years of 2012 to 16, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Karnataka were the fastest growing states. Okay, so this is again extremely, extremely good, right? All this can be used in ways. So please read this article as well, this one. Okay. Let's go ahead. Nothing much here. Let's go to the foreign news. Kamala Harris has announced her decision to, run for president, and she's going to try for the Democratic nomination. Let's see what happens, right? But interestingly, something else has happened. Google has penalized, Google was penalized by France. So this kind of thing can be obviously used in your answers. So please do remember this. $50 million, right, is there. Okay. Other than that, we have the gene editing doctor, He Jiankui, right? And remember, what are the ethical concerns of gene editing? Yes, tell us.
This particular case, he said that operation.
Okay, what is CRISPR-Cas9?
The CRISPR-Cas9 is the technology that is used in gene editing. It is an enzyme to cut apart.
Think about it. See, Ritu, Chandrakant, right? The problem is going to be you might be able to write about CRISPR-Cas9, but let's say interview में somebody asks you about CRISPR-Cas9, it's very possible, because obviously gene editing is not, it's going to be a obviously a running topic for the next 4 years also. So CRISPR-Cas9 में क्या बताओगे? What does CRISPR stands for? Yes, that's the first question. It's a full form of something. Yes, tell me. Okay, let's. So CRISPR, Cas9. So what does the full form? Just to have an idea. Hmm? What is Cas9? Okay, so clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. Okay, is a family of DNA sequences found in the genomes of prokaryotic organisms such as bacteria and archaea. Okay, and basically this and Cas9 is the enzyme that uses CRISPR sequences as a guide to recognize and cleave specific strands of DNA that are complementary to the CRISPR sequence. And now this was actually learned ki, how do viruses attacks are tackled by bacteria. Okay, right? Why do human beings have common cold, but and viral diseases, but bacteria don't have? So basically, they have this technology inbuilt in them. Okay, and so from that we learned, and then obviously it has become an amazing tool for biotechnology products and potentialities to treat diseases, right, and so on. Okay, that's the idea. So you should go through this in detail, right? I think we have already gone into many times. We have written answers, so it's better that you revise this. Okay, because see, remember in science and technology, if you are not doing it repeatedly, it is a matter of time that you will forget it. Okay, like today there's another article on in the Indian Express. Let's look at the Indian Express now. Give me a second. Okay, so let's look at the articles from the Indian Express. So this one, the DNA fingerprinting could become routine. Coming to police station, a DNA magic box. Okay, so remember we had written an answer on DNA fingerprinting as well, right? I had actually shown a very nice answer to you as well about DNA fingerprinting, right? So again, you have to revise, but if I ask you to write today, again you're going to have problems in writing that answer. Okay, so science and tech has to be revised as soon as you see it in the newspaper. Okay, it's not like polity in which you will be able to write. Okay, because there are a lot more details. Okay, the other articles were obviously about urban poor, right? How demonetization has taken untold tools and government schemes are not really that effective, right? This is by Ashutosh Varshney. Yellow fever vaccine again. There's a death of Martin Gore, who's a medical director and renowned cancer specialist, because it came after a routine yellow fever vaccination. And it has reignited a controversy over vaccines over the world because vaccines. Let's say you want to travel to South Africa, you have to take this vaccine. Okay, so yellow fever spreads to mosquitoes and often associated with jaundice. It leads to death in significant proportion of the patients. While therefore it is compulsory to before traveling to endemic countries like Africa, Central America, and South Africa to take this. Okay, now it's 17 days of vaccine. Right, and obviously the World Health Organization says that yellow fever is prevented by this, and it is very effective. It is affordable and safe. A single dose is sufficient to sustain immunity and lifelong protection against this. However, there are obviously reports in medical literature about multiple organ failure following this vaccination. And there were, there was doctors from the Clyde District Hospital, right, who had talked about this. Okay, what are the risks? Obviously, the very, very low risk. See, remember, whenever you take a vaccine, there is a chance of an allergic reaction in 1 in 55,000 people, right? I can give you an example of one of my students who took a polio vaccine and actually had got polio. Okay, right? And it is like so shocking if you think about it. And this has happened, right? So again, this is one thing. So the question is, with such risk, why go for vaccination? The idea is that if you don't take it, there's a higher probability. Okay, right? So this is there. Okay, is there a resistance to vaccination in India? Yes, it surfaces periodically. Last week, Delhi and High Court obviously underlined the importance of parental consent and vaccination given to children in school, right? Because see, remember, whenever you take a vaccine, you have to be strong enough. If let's say you're not fit and you're not feeling well, and you take a vaccination at that time, obviously you will have a weird reaction against it. It might get worse for you. Okay, so you have to take it carefully. Let's say you have high blood pressure and that time you take some medicine. Obviously, it will have a bad reaction, can have a bad reaction. So this is.
वैक्सीनेशन का फंडा ये होता है, you insert government that antigens.
Yeah, exactly.
inside.
नहीं, इसमें एक्टिव डालते हैं, इसलिए ये ज़्यादा डेंजरस। ये गवर्नमेंट नहीं है। Okay, yellow fever case.
Active is
This
more
one.
dangerous.
Okay, then this data is extremely useful. The world's 26 richest people own 3.8 billion, right? Poorest 3.8 billion. So extremely sad. And what is happening is that all over the world, the rich are getting extremely rich. Think about the increase in wealth in 1 year, 900 billion increase in wealth. Okay, and that tells you that increase is 2.5 billion per day. Okay, on the other hand, in India, again, you can see there's an increase of 0.31 billion per day, right? And this is extremely sad that 2,200 crore rupees is being just generated for the billionaires. Okay, so it is high time for a rich tax. That is the argument, that the discussion would go to a rich tax, because if this is happening, it is time that this happens. Then how is India's wealth shared? 10% of Indians own 77.4%, but the crazy thing is the top 1% owns 51%. Okay, right? So that is one problem, is the case, right? And that tells you that obviously there is a rich and poor divide, and there is a chance of a civil war in some time. Okay. Right. Okay, I think that's enough for the day, right?